So if any one of these two is already in the room, may you please start us off with the word of prayer. Andrew, I see you are on the call now. May you please go ahead and give us an opening prayer. Andrew, you may unmute and give us the opening prayer.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very well, Andrew. Please go ahead.
Shall we pray? Our Father, we want to thank you this morning. We want to thank you because you are our precious Father, Father who loves us and who takes care of us and who protects us. Thank you for the opportunity to come together so that we can discuss important issues that affect all of us. It is my prayer, Lord, that you shall help each one of us contribute effectively and give us the heart to understand and give attention to these issues. Because this world indeed belongs to us, and we have only one planet that we live on. God help us that we should take this seriously, and God help us that we should be able to overcome all the hindrances and all the issues that affects us. God, you loved us, that's why you created this earth for us, and you gave us everything that is required for our well-being. It is my prayer, Lord, that as we begin, you will be with us and you take us throughout the sessions. Thank you for our facilitators, and we pray that God shall give them special guidance and instruction that they should guide us throughout this session. And we pray for SAFSE and every other members from every other part of this SADC region, that God, you shall indeed use us to sensitize people. You shall use us to create awareness. You shall use us, Lord, to bring light to this world about issues that we have not done well. Lord, that you shall indeed heal this nation. You shall indeed heal this region. You shall indeed heal the human habits so that we shall turn to you, Lord, in praise and worship. Thank you, Lord, because at timely, you always chastise us and you always rebuke us. Help us as we begin and up to the end of this session in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Andrew, for the prayer. And we would want to proceed now. And next on our program, I would like to invite Francesca De Gasperis, who is the Executive Director of SAFSE, to welcome us as well as to give us a full introduction of our speakers for today. Francesca, over to you.
Thank you, Gabriel. Good morning, everyone. It's wonderful to be with you here this morning. I hope you're having lovely weather wherever you are, here on the continent and also in Europe. It's so wonderful to have such a wonderful group of enthusiastic faith leaders and others coming to talk about this important issue of agroecology. I'm here in Johannesburg at the moment, and yesterday I was at a meeting with trade unions and other civil society actors on the just transition. And I was really impressed to see the COSATU, one of the major trade unions here in South Africa, has looked at the just transition and has produced materials on it. And in their analysis of the just transition, they did not only look at the issue of the climate crisis and energy, as we many times hear. We oftentimes hear about energy as being the main issue with the climate crisis, but they did a detailed analysis of agriculture as well. And they started talking about what are the challenges that we face in South Africa, in our region, when we talk about climate change. And agroecology featured as a main solution to the climate crisis. And it's wonderful to see trade unions understanding the issue of climate change, understanding the issue of agriculture, and understanding the role that agroecology can play for all of us. And today really is for us together to understand better, what does agriculture really mean? Agroecology really mean for us in terms of our own lives and in terms of how we understand our food systems where we are based. You know, SAFSI brought this issue of food and climate justice I think it was within the year that I started here as executive director. And it came up for us very strongly from the experiences of faith leaders in the region, how important and how degraded the food systems were becoming. And we know that this is an absolutely critical issue for vulnerable communities across the southern and eastern Africa. And as climate impacts increase and we see them accelerating, so our food systems become more and more vulnerable. But that's not the only way that our food systems are vulnerable. They're also vulnerable from this concept of the industrialization of agriculture. This concept that if we put enough inputs, enough pesticides, enough products, enough expensive seeds that are modified in various ways, that will indeed allow us to get greater output from the earth, greater output from nature. But we know from our faith teachings that living in harmony with nature, living a just life, is one of the most important things that we can do as people of faith. And what does that mean to each and every one of us and to our communities? What does it mean to live in harmony with nature? And so these are some of the things that we're going to be unpacking today. And we have some really fantastic speakers today. I want to welcome them now, as Gabriel has asked me to do. Thank you, Gabriel, for giving me this honor. And I'm going to do it in the order of the agenda, which I think you've seen. I'm not sure if you've had a chance to see the agenda, but maybe we could have that up on the screen now, and I'll just take everyone through the agenda for the day. Is that possible, please, team?
Yes, we'll ask Patiswa, please, may you help share?
I see we're just changing hosts and we're getting that up. Thanks so much, Patiswa. Fantastic. So there it is. There you can see our agenda for the day. So we're going to start with, as we've heard, but the first person who's speaking with us today is Stephanie Swanepoel. Steph has been such an amazing person for SAFSI. She's helped us learn so much about agroecology. And she has a really interesting history of her own work. Steph is a writer, a researcher, and a lecturer, and she looks specifically at sustainable and regenerative systems, food systems. And she's worked with a whole range of organizations from the World Bank to SAFSI and many, many others. She does a lot of local work. She's worked in Zambia a lot, and local projects looking at sustainability reports, including for big corporates like ShopRite, which you know throughout Africa as well. And she's done research on African food systems for the African Center for Biodiversity, including things like videography production. And she lectures now in food systems activism and creative expression at the Sustainability Institute. So we're absolutely thrilled to have Stephanie with us, and we're really looking forward to her contribution. She also does fantastic work with African Earth Rights, a communications consultancy, and she's the director of the Beach Co-op, an organization that does a lot of cleanups on the beach. And it doesn't say this here in her bio, but I know that she also is very involved in a organization just here in Cape Town called the Cost Gangsters, which is local food production. So welcome, Steph. We're really looking forward to listening to you. After Steph, we've got Francis. not me, but someone with a very close name to me, Frances Davies from Zambia, from Zob. And we're very thrilled to have Frances with us. Frances is actually the daughter of our founder, Bishop Jeff Davies. She lives in Zambia, and she's the co-founder and coordinator of the Zambian Alliance for Agroecology and Biodiversity. So she's a very illustrious environmental campaigner, and she has that in her veins from her parents who founded SAFSI, her mother, Kate Davies, as well. Her work now with ZOB is an advocacy network of faith, farmer, and civil society organizations. It promotes and supports the just and sustainable food and agroecology system in Zambia. Frances has an MPhil in sustainability planning and development, and she's a researcher, an activist, and a sustainability leader with a broad interest in global food systems. And she's passionate about the work she does in Zambia, working with a range of stakeholders for small-scale rural farmers to help with really shaping the food discussions and policy work in Zambia. And she collaborates with a number of NGOs, including SAFSI. So we're so happy to have you with us, Frances. And she's going to be telling us a little bit more about why agroecology. I missed out my colleague Gabriel Manyangaza because we all know Gabriel. Gabriel's the host of this illustrious meeting, and he is the lead on agroecology. And he is a fantastic, both faith leader and a man who can really speak truth to power. Gabriel, thank you so much for this event. And thank you to my colleagues for all the hard work I know that goes into running an event like this. Okay, so back to my list. Next up, we've got Kanagwa Nulove, who's also from Zambia, and she's going to be telling us a little bit more about her experiences with agroecology and markets. And let me give you a little bit more about who she is. She's a farmer and she lives in Lusaka. She's passionate about sustainable food systems and agriculture. She's a member of the International Federation of Organic Agricultural Movements, IFA, which is part of the UN processes as well. And she's an ecological organic agricultural leadership. Before she started organic farming, Kanagwa worked in business and marketing. Hence, she's got this wonderful combination of both being a farmer and understanding the business world. She's got a Bachelor of Arts from the University of Zambia and has several certificates in marketing, including social media. So I'm sure we're going to learn a lot from her. Right now, before becoming a full-time farmer, she did operations, sales, and marketing managers for community markets on conservation and Saba Foods in Lusaka. Welcome, Nagwa. We're really looking forward to hearing more about how do we market this thing about agroecology. So then we have Busisiwe Mang. Okay, Busisiwe, I'm really sorry. I hope I don't mangle your surname, Magandela. I hope that you must teach me if I'm getting it wrong. Busisiwe is a long collaborator with SAFSI. She's taught us so much. She's an amazing advocate and she is a small scale farmer herself. She's a seed activist. She's an advocate for clean and healthy produced nutritionally dense food. She's an agroecology farmer in East London in the Eastern Cape here in South Africa. Previously, she was a nurse educator who graduated from UNISA. And she also is an ecological organic agriculture leader trained by IFA. She has represented South Africa in the Southern African region, so she's very involved in food systems education and thinking through. She's also a participatory guaranteed system pollinator and graduate of Future Females Business School. That sounds amazing, Busisiwe, and I'm really looking forward to learning more from you about how this is really a gender issue. We know that climate's going to impact women disproportionately for men. Let's unpack this further. What is this issue of agriculture and women, and how can we understand and support gender better as women and men, whether we're farmers or not, and as people of faith? And then finally, and definitely not last but not least, we've got Dr. Manjo Kuria from the World Council of Churches. What an honor it is to have you with us too. You are Dr. Manjo is a medical doctor from Malaysia, and he's a coordinator at the WCC of the Ecumenical Advocacy Alliance. He also leads the Food for Life campaign. So he's a perfect person to round off our day. We all know from having heard Bandana Shiva as our keynote at our AGM, what's been happening in India. So it's going to be very interesting to hear, because he did his postgraduate training in community health in India, and he worked for 7 years in church-related institutions in different parts of India. So India has really been on this green food revolution for a long time, and he knows a lot of the pitfalls and issues that have been coming out in India that we're also seeing reflected in Africa. From 1999, Dr. Manjo directed the Health and Healing Program at the World Council of Churches in Geneva until 2012, and then he managed policy and advocacy work at the International AIDS Society. So now he's gone back to WCC, and lucky for us, he's with us today. He's also an adjunct faculty at the College of Public Health in Kent State University. He's a published author, poet, and artist, and so I'm hoping we might even get a little bit of poetry in his offering with us today. Thank you so much. It's wonderful to have you with us. And thank you also, please, for your gender awareness. Please look at, if you can, look at Dr. Manjo. I hope I'm also pronouncing your name correctly. He has got on his screen Thursdays in Black. And this is a gender awareness campaign. On Thursdays, we should all be wearing black, because we want to see a world without rape or any kind of sexual violence. So thank you so much for reminding us of that important global movement, Thursdays in Black. It's very big here in our region as well. And I don't know if others know about that, but I just wanted to highlight that. Thank you, Gabriel. I think that's all from me for now. I'm looking forward to a wonderful session.
Thank you very much, Francesca, for giving us a detailed introduction of our guests today who are going to be presenting to us. And we thank all of them for availing their time to share with us the vast knowledge that we have heard from the introductions. And would now want to move forward and ask Steph to actually begin to share with us what is agroecology, and also to share with us the principles of agroecology, because as faith leaders, as people who are attending this call today, would want to learn so that we are able to practice and make a contribution. As Francesca has already mentioned, that agroecology is becoming central to our fight against the climate crisis. Over to you, Steph.
Good morning, everybody. It's lovely to be here, and I see a lot of familiar faces and names. So I've been asked to give an overview of what agroecology is and the principles that it aligns to. But first, I'd just like to share something about a lady's work in Ladakh, Tibet, which is at the top of India and below China. And she's an anthropologist, and she started working there many decades ago. And her first impressions, she went into these communities, very rural communities. Modernization still hadn't appeared. People didn't have TVs or all of the sort of technical hoo-ha and consumer goods that we have today. And she made a comment that she had asked some of the villagers, you know, people had smaller houses or bigger houses, and she'd asked, you know, how many poor people do you have in your community? And they didn't understand the question, because they didn't understand what poverty meant as related to material goods. And so she started exploring this concept of how we see the world, the poverty around us, the degradation, the inequality that we all seem to accept, that it is just a thing. It just is, you know, the world is in the state because it just is. But it's not. You know, all of these terrible things that are happening are outcomes of the systems that we've chosen, the economic systems, the social systems. And as outcomes, it means that they can be changed. And agroecology is an amazing approach to changing all of that. Gabriel, I'm going to share my screen. Can you enable screen sharing?
This one, may you please help?
59.
There we go. Thank you. I have that showing.
Yes,
So
it's
agroecology is
showing.
an amazing, thank you, is an amazing, sorry.
You may go into the slideshow so that it is bigger on the screen.
Okay, let me try. I don't know why it's doing that. Okay, just give me a second. Apologies. Technological hits, the amazing thing about technology, and we still don't have it right. Sorry, Gabriel, I'll try again.
There we go, that's fine now.
Okay, so the amazing thing about agroecology is that it's actually a whole of life approach. So agroecology does not just speak to production practices. Often people think agroecology is just a way of farming. So like organics or biodynamics or permaculture, but it actually speaks to the whole of life. And some people describe it as a way of combining science, lived experience, and local knowledge to make food and farming systems more environmentally friendly, more just, more equitable, in a way of combating these many problems that we face today. So there are a set of principles that relate to agroecology that we're going to talk through, so that when the rest of the presenters today speak, that you have some sense of the practices that are associated with those principles. And the principles relate to production principles, but also social and economic, like how we relate in our food and farming systems to some of the social and economic challenges that we face. There's a big focus on including women and youth in agroecology, and that's both in the economic opportunities of goals, how decisions are made about our food and farming systems. Agroecology is a political movement, it's a social movement that aims to transform our food and farming systems from the bottom up, to make sure that our voices are included in those power circles where decisions are made. So there are 10 elements or principles, and I will go through them relatively quickly. Please write in the chat if you have any questions and we can come back to it. So the elements are efficiency, diversity, co-creation of knowledge, synergies, culture and food traditions, human and social values, building resilience, recycling, circular economies, and then proper governance. So appropriate governance for the situation. Many of these principles you could also use in your own life. Remember that food and farming systems do not stop with farmers. You know, we are all consumers, we're all eaters, and our decisions about where we buy food, what we buy, impacts the whole food and farming system. So we all have a big role to play in bringing about better systems. So I'm combining efficiency and recycling, but basically it's about getting the most out of what you already have. So using natural processes to boost soil fertility, for example. So one practice is the planting of crops like beans or other legumes that actually fix nitrogen in the soil. So this means that you don't necessarily have to go and now buy fertilizer and bring it in. It also talks to harvesting rainwater, which you can do in your own garden. You know, so you can either have water tanks, or farmers can dig channels, or in your garden, you can dig channels so that when the rainwater falls, you're actually directing it to where it's needed most and where it can go into the ground, raise the water level in the ground. So this helps make us more resistant to drought. It also means that we're using less resources that come from somewhere else. Second principle is diversity, and diversity applies to everything. So it applies to the crops that are planted. It applies to income streams. All of these things help make stronger systems. So the more diverse the system, the more crops that you have, the different kinds of crops, the healthier soils will be. The more resistant the whole farming system is to pest and disease attack. If you're sitting with a monocrop, like many small farmers in Africa, because of the farm input subsidy programs, tend to have stopped growing lots of crops and now just grow maize because that's what they get subsidies for. So when you have a maize crop and then you have a maize pest or maize disease, the chances of losing the entire crop are very high. But diversity plays a bigger role at the landscape level. So the more diverse your landscapes are, the more animals you have, the more wildlife there is, the more wild plants plus farmed plants that there are. It means that your pollinators will stay healthy, that the air is purer, that your water is purer, that your soils are healthier. So ecosystem stability at a landscape level rests very much on high levels of biodiversity, and that includes farming products. Also, obviously, the more diversity you have, the more macro and micronutrients are coming out. So we all live in countries where malnutrition, stunting, wasting, or obesity, even overweight, is related to very poor nutrition. So people are eating one kind of food. And I'm going to use maize again as an example. Like they might just be eating pap, but they're not eating the greens or the berries or the fruits. The levels of malnutrition in Africa are very, very worrying. But diversity also means that farmers have different crops to sell. So when they go to market, they're not just going with maize, where everybody might be selling maize, so the prices stay lower. So they've got a diversity of crops to sell, which means more income streams for them, which means more resilience. So diversity is a very big part of agroecology. And practices that are included within this element are things like multi-cropping, intercropping, crop rotation. Co-creation of knowledge, which is not really mentioned in other approaches to sustainable agriculture. You don't really see this emphasis on co-creation of knowledge. So agroecology is very strong to say that farmers' knowledge, farmers' experience, their lived experience, their indigenous knowledge is as important as scientific knowledge. And so we need to be using both. We can't look at food and farming systems and take knowledge that is created in universities or laboratories far away and ignore the people who actually living on the ground and who understand how their systems work. You know, they have knowledge about the wild plants, they have knowledge about adaptation of plants, and in climate change, this is going to be a critical thing, is how do we use, acknowledge, and support the growth of knowledge on the ground. So in agroecology, there's a focus on what they call participatory research, which means that academics and farmers work together on problems or issues that emerge on the ground. So the research needs to be useful and it needs to be farmer-led. And then there's a big push all over Africa now to include agroecology education at all levels of schooling. So from the primary school all the way through to universities and technicons. I've just noticed the spelling mistake on the slide, my apologies. Another element is what they call synergies, which really is about understanding the system, for the farmer to understand the system that he works in and to be able to use what nature has already provided and then build on that. So one, it reduces the cost but it also makes for more resilient system. So for example, instead of putting up, big shade cloths, you would plant the windbreaks, and you can plant windbreaks with trees or shrubs that actually also then give food, or medicine or something like that. So you're just making the system stronger and stronger every time you're adding something that's natural, that works with other things. There are also many, they call it beneficial pest or beneficial pest management, where you are using plants to either attract pests to a sacrificial plant, like a plant that you're willing to let go of because it's attracting the pests from the plants you want to keep. You can plant plants that attract pollinators so that you don't have to pay for pollination services. I don't know if this is such a big issue anymore in other countries in Africa, but in South Africa, farmers are having to now pay to bring beekeepers and their bees to pollinate, which obviously then raises the cost of production and then the cost of food. It's a very strong emphasis on culture and food tradition. And this, I'm sure Bosi will also talk to you. It's about celebrating this culture in agriculture. So very slowly over the last sort of 50, 60, 70 years, and very fast now, culture is completely being stripped from agriculture. So agriculture is seen literally as sort of a almost robotic thing of like, okay, you're planting food, taking it to market. But that whole sort of concept about what food you're planting, why are you planting it, and how you prepare it and how you eat it used to be a stable part of all of our lives, actually like the basis of society in a way. And this stripping away to where we're seeing food just as an input into our human bodies to create energy is also eroding our spiritual, emotional, cultural, social bonds. It's very critical that we go back and reclaim that culture in agriculture. And that relates to a lot of things like seed festivals or preparation for weddings and using particular crops for major milestones in lives. We need to go back. We need to understand what are indigenous and our local crops. And we need to see them in supermarkets, and we need to see them in restaurants. And this will help us to reclaim some sovereignty over our food system. This ties in very much with the emphasis on human and social values. So how do we reclaim our identity, our traditions, our all of these social aspects that are related to food and farming? And how do we make sure that the food that's coming out of our farming systems is diversified, is culturally appropriate? And remember, we are key because we all eat. We're a key part in this chain. This job cannot be left just for farmers. Like we have to all make sure that we are reclaiming our heritage. And that does not mean going backwards. It doesn't mean that we must all go back to some idyllic version of, it doesn't mean that at all. It means that the principles of human life, like our culture, the reason why humans are so amazing is because we're innovative, we're creative, we celebratory creatures, and we need to claim that in our food and our farming systems. One of the practices involved with this is around fair pricing for food. And this is why it's so important that where we spend our money on food, we have to make it count in a whole range of levels. So we need to make sure that we're buying good nutrition. We need to make sure that the farmer is getting a fair price and not the supermarkets. So this emphasis on, buying local is really, really important, so that we make sure that our producers, the people who are actually growing for us, are getting a fair price. Building resilience. I spoke a little bit earlier about how the more diversified your farming system is, the stronger it is, so you can weather sort of extreme events. which we're going to see more and more of in climate change. I mean, Southern Africa has been hit so hard over the last few years with climate change impacts, and there are more coming. So we need to make sure that our farming systems and our feed systems can weather these kinds of shocks. COVID is a really good example of showing how weak our current food systems are because they failed in COVID. So climate change mitigation, growing organically, planting trees, making sure that you've got healthy soils. Organic soils will sequester far more carbon than poisoned soils or soils that are farmed chemically. Planting hedges, trees, natural windbreaks, like really getting into the design. And that knowledge is also being lost and eroded. And sort of the responsibility for holding that knowledge has been given over to universities or people sitting very far away. So building resilience is really key. Then circular economy. So all of these elements, you'll see, they start from production, they're going up to marketing, they're going to economic levels. So they all tie in together in this whole of life approach to food and farming systems. Circular economies essentially rest on, reusing, recycling, upcycling, shorter value chains. So coming back to selling directly to consumers. I worked on a paper years ago for SEB where they were looking at how much does a farmer get out of a loaf of bread. And at that time, out of the 21 slices of bread, 3, the equivalent cost of 3 slices out of 21 went back to the farmer. He takes all the risk and does most of the work. So circular economies looks very much at this like fair, short distribution networks and re-embedding food systems back into local economies. The last element speaks to governance and looking at where should governance of food systems rest? Should it rest at the local level? Should the people who are actually producing and buying being responsible for governance? There's a lot of exciting and sort of innovative things around water management, for example, throughout Africa, where communities have come together and with support from external actors have taken over sort of governance of their water resources. It also includes aspects like PGS, which is the Participatory Guarantee System. So that's for organic smallholder farmers. You don't want the third-party certification. It's very expensive. It's not really appropriate to our systems. But a participatory guarantee system involves your farmers and your consumers and your retailers that all visit the farms and give a guarantee of quality assurance. So we could talk for hours about the elements of agroecology, but I'm hoping that I've been able to give you an overview of the core sort of principles and some idea of how they would play out in practice. And then our other 3 speakers today will be taking you deeper into different aspects. So thank you for your time. Thank you, Gabriel. I'm going to hand back to you.
Thank you very much, Steph, for laying the foundation for the day-to-day and detailing the 13 principles of agroecology. And from that, I actually saw my role as an individual in what I should also do to contribute towards making sure that we deal with the climate crisis and also looking after the environment. Next, we would want to just have a quick exercise. And in this quick exercise, we would want us all to participate in the Mentimeter and just quickly pop in which SDGs support agroecological principles. And I would ask Patiswa to share in the chat the link to this Mentimeter. And we can quickly write up which SDGs do we think support agroecological principles. Just in 2 minutes, if all of us can actually go to the chat and the link there so that we are able to also participate and share our knowledge. We can go, all of us, to the chat box and click on the link that has been shared and write out what we think so that we can all share on our knowledge from our different experiences. Which SDGs have we seen that closely supporting the agroecology processes as it's been detailed by Steph. Let's write and share. I see there are some who have already posted. Once you have written, please post it through so that we can and then see the bigger picture on the screen. And if Patiswa may please share your screen. Thank you. We see some have already started to write. Please do write and post. We see the good health and the well-being, eradicating poverty, eradicating hunger, zero hunger, no poverty, and an improved quality of life. So we see that we have a closer link. The agroecological principles have a closer link to the SDGs. Let's keep posting and writing there. And maybe finally, we would also want to share this even at the end. So you keep posting, and we would want to see which of these are linked, and maybe in our day-to-day work, how are we also making a contribution towards both the SDGs and also living within the agroecological principles. Thank you very much for those that have managed to post so far. In the interest of time, we will continue to share this in the next sessions. So keep on writing, and we will be able to share this with everyone on which SDGs are directly linked, so that if you are also doing the work along those lines, then you'll be aware that your contribution to agroecology is necessary, and also for you to be able to work through the SDGs. So without further ado, we want now to move on to our next presenter so that we will keep on time. And I would now like to invite Francis Davies from the Zambia Alliance for Agroecology and Biodiversity to share with us why agroecology, and also share with us its impact on climate change and the environment, and also how it contributes towards the total pushback against industrial farming. Over to you, Francis.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much. So a very, very warm greeting to everyone. Sorry, let me just also work out my view. Thank you. So it's an absolute privilege to be here. And I really am very grateful to SAFC for this opportunity and to connect with everyone from around Africa, I believe. And so my name is Frances Davies, and I'm living in Zambia. And of course, SAFC is very, very close to my heart. I didn't know whether, but Francesca has given me out that I am indeed Kate and Jeff Davies' daughter. And so it is a privilege. It's a privilege to be here. So I work with the Zambian Alliance for Agroecology, but also with the Food and Agriculture, the Agro-Ecology Food Sovereignty Network across Africa. So the Alliance for Food Sovereignty in Africa, and many other partners, around the world. Unless we can connect to each other, unless we can rebuild bottom-up power and strength with each other, we're not going to be able to overcome the multiple crises that we face. So thank you for the opportunity of being here. I'm going, can I share my screen, Gabriel?
Yes, Patricia, please allow Francis to share a screen.
Francis, you are co-host. You can go ahead and share your screen.
Oh, it says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Okay, let me just check on myself. You should be able to share now. Can you check again, please?
Yeah. Great. So can everyone see that?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm not a big PowerPointer, but I put together something so that we can just have some images to go by and follow the conversation. So I'm really grateful to Stephanie for giving such a really great introduction to agroecology and what this really means for us. And I think I want to just go into the origins of why this conversation on agroecology and why the big focus. Why is SAFC talking about food systems and agroecology? Why are world leaders meeting on food systems and agroecology? Why are we having summits on food systems? And we keep on hearing this word about agroecology. And so I think it was right back in the 60s, after in the middle of the beginnings of the Industrial Revolution, where things were really beginning to heat up and we started to realize perhaps what we were doing, is we started realizing that our digging up of coal and oil from the earth, our industrial development systems were driving collapse of our climate through emissions of carbon. And we were also realizing that industrial agriculture, again, through the utilization of fossil fuels and chemical pesticides, were poisoning our earth and our soil and the very basis from which we sustain ourselves. And so people were beginning to wake up to these crises that were happening. And this was something that they were saying would be a climate crisis that we would face unless we actually did something about this, unless we acted in time. And the same as we realized that our industrial food processes were actually killing the life source upon which we were growing our food and living. And this became known as the biodiversity crisis. And together with that, we realized that we were poisoning ourselves through poisoning our Mother Earth and the unfolding health crisis. Of course, this is based in a serious human rights crisis, the way that global trade relations function, and we've continued to see the complete neglect of indigenous peoples and around the world. And so this really was at the center of the human rights crisis and the establishment of the Convention of Social and Economic, the Convention on Human Rights, on Universal Human Rights. So there was a really remarkable gathering that came together around the Rio Earth Summit, and it was the biggest summit, international meeting, and the Convention on Biological Diversity was established. And with this, we also had the establishment of the United Nations framework on climate change, as well as the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification. So these all really centered on the fact that the world woke up to the fact that we needed to address climate change, we needed to address the biodiversity crisis, and we needed to address the desertification crisis that was happening because of particularly large-scale industrial agriculture and the expense of industrial development. So this was really quite a momentous moment in 1992 when these conventions came to power. So at the same time, Africa was really, our African leaders had fought really hard to reclaim sovereign power, the struggles for independence, and our African leaders were really at the forefront a lot of the negotiations in these international conventions, as well as all of the different protocols and the frameworks, the strategies that come out of these. And our African leaders were really standing up really strongly and saying, we will not accept unjust frameworks again. We are not just accepting false solutions again. We are tired of imperial rule. We are tired of the injustice. We need to define our own laws as Africans. And there was a lot of strong negotiation around these international debates, responding to the crises that we saw. And then after many, many, many years of negotiations, everyone is very familiar with these. Climate negotiations have continued. And the interlinkages between these multiple crises that we're facing, climate, biodiversity, health, human rights, have really begun to be exposed, and in the international discussions, particularly Africans continued to speak out about what does this really mean? What does this really mean for Africa? So despite fantastic initial energy, there are a lot of people who stand to lose and corporate greed in the system that we have today. And there's been what we now see, and I think everyone is very familiar with the corporate capture of our international discussions and the continuation of the destruction and the plundering of the planet. And what we really see is the converging of these. And if we look at this very, very important, this is a very complex picture, but it just gives a very nice overarching picture of how we can really see that food and farming, particularly in Africa, is at the center of the multiple crises that we face. So the climate crisis, the biodiversity crisis, and the health crisis. And really at the center of this is our food systems and getting food systems right. So I think we're all familiar, the SDGs, which we've all gone through. What role does food and agriculture play in achieving the SDGs? And particularly for Africa, where the majority of our populations rely on food production. The majority of women in Africa rely on some form of livelihood that is related to food and agriculture. The majority of our livelihoods in Africa are linked to food and agriculture. And so unless we get food and agriculture right, we are going to actually fail on all of the SDGs. And while we are looking at how do we solve this, we also go back to our crises that we face, and then looking at what are some of the solutions that are being proposed to Africa for the climate crisis. What are some of the solutions that are coming out of these very long-winded and ongoing international negotiations under all of these frameworks, under the climate frameworks, under the biodiversity frameworks, and indeed the food discussions and the health discussions. So in Africa particularly, we really see that food is absolutely at the center of our capacity to address the multiple crises that we face. So what does that mean for us? What does that mean for us as people in Africa, faced with this very, very, very overwhelming crisis? And to share a little story of my own journey, I did not want to get into food work, because food is something that is so part of us and in one's every single day life. You know, there's no separating work from life. Food is part of who we are. Agriculture is part of our identity. It's our link to the land. It's indeed linked to our spirituality. In our faith communities, we come together around food and around the sharing of food. But when I did my master's in sustainable development and we were presented with what was called the poly crisis, and as a young person, the very overwhelming feeling that the future was very, very precarious. And what do I do as a very small individual person? And I realized that our avenue of hope actually is in the everyday actions, is the tangible things that we can do around food. And when we talk about food, we're talking about it from this food systems perspective, is that one action is aligned to so many other, a much bigger system. So there's hope in that entry point of, right, let's change our food system. And if we change our food system, we're going to be able to achieve all of the other SDGs, and we're going to be able to deal with the food crisis or the climate crisis, the biodiversity crisis, our social crises. We can nourish children again. We can deal with malnutrition, etc., etc. But of course, we are, so this very good piece of research shows that there are lock-ins to the current system that we exist in. And Gabriel, just give me a time warning as well, please, because I don't have the time in front of me. So the IPES, the International Panel of Experts on Food, has come up with this very, very useful conceptual framework where we can see why are we not, if we see that this transition that we have to do, why are we not Why is this transition not happening? And this concentration of power is right at the center of the lock-ins to the industrial agriculture system and the lock-ins to the crisis that continue to drive climate change, biodiversity loss, and the health crisis that we face. And so this is really, really important when we then look at, okay, so how are we addressing some of the solutions to this crisis that we face? And this bit right here in the center is the concentration of power. So what I think many, many people are very, very well aware of is that although our conversations around dealing with climate change, dealing with these crises have been going on at international level for way, way too long, for 40 years. And where are we? And
you may get to wind up, Frances.
Okay, thank you very much. Is that the international frameworks that govern a lot of the laws that are in our countries today are held by corporate actors. And so in all of these discussions at the international level is corporate actors have now captured all of these discussions. And this goes from the United Nations level down to the African Union, down to the regional economic communities, and is then translated into our national laws. And we are very, very aware in each of our countries that our policies are being written by outside foreign actors, continuing to benefit from the extraction of resources and agriculture and selling of industrial agriculture systems into Africa, rather than being able to reclaim that power and transition to the food system that we know that we need to do. And the fundamental aspect of agroecology, as Steph has shown in those very, very important principles, is it deals with this concentration of power. Kanangwa, who's the next speaker, and I were in a policy meeting the whole of yesterday on our national policy on genetically modified organisms. And this has been written by outsiders directly coming from the international level all the way through African Union. All of these institutions are captured by multinational corporations who want to continue the industrial agriculture system. And here we are at the national level trying to reclaim sovereignty around this. And my plea really is for faith leaders to stand up and challenge this thinking, because our leaders are not doing it because they have been completely captured within these systems. And so we really, the whole world really is looking to faith leaders for that moral, spiritual guidance now to say enough is enough. And unless our faith leaders stand up to really advocate and support this transition, it's not going to be able to happen in Africa. And so the role of the faith communities in ensuring that agroecology, which is reclaiming sovereign power back into Africa, back to farmers, back to consumers, cannot be undermined and must be at the center of all of our policies. Is the center of how we deal with climate change, how we deal with biodiversity crisis, and how we deal with the health crisis. So thank you very much. Thanks, Gabriel.
Thank you very much, Frances, for that detailed explanation as to why we need agroecology. And if we do have any questions, please let's post them into the chat so that we'll have time for the presenters to respond to your questions. Thank you for the detailed systems approach that would require agriculture to be in the center, and not only agriculture, but the right type of agriculture, which is agroecology. Thank you very much. Now we are moving on to our next presenter. But before she does the presentation, she would like us to go through a quick poll. So please accept the link that is going to be shared in the chat box and vote on the poll that is coming up. And immediately after that poll, would have Kanangwa coming in to speak to that poll and also make a presentation. So this one, if you may share with us the poll so that we can just choose one that we think suits our preference. Question is, which food would you prefer to buy? Food grown with synthetic fertilizer and chemical pests, or food grown with natural and organic fertilizer? Please, let's all try and vote in that poll. We only have 2 minutes to 1.5 minutes left now to show our preference on which food we would prefer. I think we can all see that so far we have about 39 people who have entered the poll, and 98% are showing that food grown with natural and or organic fertilizer is their preference. May we have more people voting? We have 73 people on this call, and we are only on 42. Can we please try and go into the poll and indicate our preference? We now have 44 people who have voted, and the number is going up now to 46. Can we show our preference on the food, one which is grown using synthetic fertilizer and chemical pesticides, and the food that is grown with natural or organic fertilizer? Which one do we prefer? And as we are going through this, Kanangwa, may you please come in, and if you'd like to share your presentation, I think you have the right to share that. And we may get to the end of our poll so that we move on with our work. So we are going to end the poll now, and so far 47 people have indicated their preferences, and may we share the final result, which stands at 98% of the people who have indicated their preference say they would prefer to have food grown with natural or organic fertilizer over the food that is grown using synthetic fertilizer and chemical pests. Thank you very much. And now over to you, Kanangwa. We may stop sharing.
Thank you. Hi, good morning, everyone. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear, Kanangwa. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi, everyone, and hi, Gabriel. I'm always honored to be part of such an important discussion. And I always think that my work on sales and marketing is very easy. As you can see from the exercise that we have just done, I'm almost compelled not to share my presentation just because of this. There's your answer. So as Gabriel has said, as you've all seen, 47 people voted, and 46 out of the 47 chose the food grown with natural or organic fertilizer. That's the one that they would prefer. And only 2% chose food grown with synthetic fertilizer and chemical pesticide. I want to assume that that's a mistake. So going by this, you can see that there's a lot of market for you. So obviously, what I'm trying to demonstrate here is that with the right information, you can sell your agroecologically grown food. With the right information, the right wording, you can. And so maybe let's just go into this. Thank you very much for all those that voted. And I want to share my screen. I hope I can, because my computer always doesn't like to be part of such things sometimes. But I will try. Are we there yet? I'm in Zambia, so it's already saying that my resource is very low. Gabriel, could you share the screen for me so that I avoid going off? Is that possible on your end? I'm getting a warning that my resource is low and I might have to switch off some stuff. Okay, so could we have it a bit bigger on this? Okay, so thanks again everyone for being here, and thanks again for this privilege to be here to talk about agroecology and markets. So I'll go straight into my presentation. And could we go to slide number 2, please? So the first thing to realize when you are marketing anything, and in this case, when you are marketing agroecology products, you have got to master the 4 P's of marketing. And the 4 P's of marketing are product, price, place, and promotion. You have to understand before you do anything, what is your product and what is your price? So what is your product? Is it agroecological fresh food from the garden? Is it processed food? What is it? What are you selling? Or are you selling knowledge on agroecology? The next thing that you have to think about is the price. There's various ways of determining prices. I like what Stephanie said when she was presenting about, the aspect of agroecology, which involves fair pricing. There's always a big debate about pricing, even in our own circles. There's a lot of misconstrued ideas that agroecological food has got to be more expensive than conventional food. And yet, to all intents and purposes, the way we market, the way we understand, the way we practice agroecology shows and proves that actually, in the long term, agroecological farming or agroecological production of food is cheaper than conventional. I'm quite privileged that I'm a producer, and I am testimony to this. Done the right way, you can reduce your cost of production using the best practices in agroecology. So the pricing has got to be fair, and it can be fair, taking into account all the other aspects of your business, including distribution, packaging, and all sorts. Also going back to what Stephanie said, that the one thing that's very interesting about human beings is that we're very innovative. So I saw somewhere where they were using banana leaves for packaging of agroecologically grown products. So you see, if you are going to incorporate agroecology, which includes trees, for example, you as a producer can choose to grow bananas, for example, as part of your packaging solutions. That way, you're not going to pass on the cost to your consumers. More often than not, whatever cost that you take on as a producer, you pass it on to your consumer. And that's not what we want to do. For example, our company's philosophy is that we want to make available affordable, healthy, agroecologically grown products to all members of the society in Zambia. So on the one hand, where we can control what we can control, we try to keep the cost of our production to the minimum. That way, your price, you'll be sitting on the shelf at a favorable price, right next to conventional products, and that will give you an advantage. The next P of marketing is the place. You should understand first and foremost, where are you selling your products? Are you in a rural area? Are you in an urban area? Where are you? That's very important for you as you're going. For example, if you're going to sell in the open market, really, in such cases, packaging doesn't really matter. Although I am quite against the way open markets deal with food, I always think that food should be dealt with respect and going by the ethos of, let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. You're not going to throw food down next to a drainage with storage water and hope that you can, go and eat it and it's still healthy. So yes, the place is very important for you to understand how you're going to give yourself leverage as you market your product. And also the promotion. What promotion are you going to use? If you're targeting chief executives, for example, for your vegetable boxes, how are you going to promote this information? So these are very important aspects of marketing to consider: the product, the price, the place, and the promotion. So if it's chief executives, of course, are you going to do cold calling on them? Are you going to use unsolicited feeds online? How are you going to do it? So basically, the promotion is also very important because you want to reach your targeted market. The next thing about how to have agroecological markets is to think as an entrepreneur would. So basically, an entrepreneur fills the gap in the market. An entrepreneur does the research, goes into the market and says, what is missing in my market and how am I going to fill the gap? Not that, it's very interesting in my country how there's this one long street, right? In a place called Kalingalinga. Many years ago, one person started a little shop with, making gates, metal work, like gates and, metal television stands, etc. And within a space of 3 years, there were nearly 20 of such little businesses doing exactly the same thing. So you see, the first entrepreneur, the first one who started the shop was aiming to fill the gap, in the market of steel works. The second one saw that the other person was doing well and decided to start his own. And the third saw 2 people were doing well. So, that kind of thing, I don't really, we don't really support this in sales and marketing. So basically what would have happened would be, okay, this person has started this steel works and the people who are coming there for gates, for example, would most likely need locks. So you set up right next to that steelworks shop, selling locks for the people who are coming to buy gates, or selling televisions to the people who are coming to buy television stands, or selling tanks to the people who are coming to buy, water tanks. You know what I mean? So really, an entrepreneur fills the gap in the market and is not threatened by anything that is happening right next door. And almost repeating myself, an entrepreneur responds to the need of the consumer. What does the consumer need at the moment? So for example, if we go back to agroecology, agroecological products, look at yourself in the community, go around and say, what is missing? So for example, if all the stands in that market are filled with kale, and you observe people coming to ask for garlic, there you go. You go back to your plot, plant garlic, and you sit right next to the person selling kale, selling your garlic. So an entrepreneur responds to the needs of the consumer, addresses local needs first before thinking about the outside. And actually, this helps the entrepreneur first and foremost. When you address the local needs, you are going to cut your cost of production in terms of distribution and other things related to the cost of sales and the cost of marketing. So we're not trying to limit you, but it's better to start local first before you think about diversifying and going across the borders or going across regional, local regional borders. The entrepreneur also shortens the value chain, almost talking about addressing the local needs first, and also starts with what's in demand. For instance, I talked about this aspect of COVID-19, how people in my country were breaking into people's yards during when the pandemic was quite rife to get eucalyptus leaves. They were actually stealing eucalyptus leaves from people's gardens. So you see, they were seeing, of course, we're not promoting theft, but they were seeing what was, what was needed at the time of COVID. It was eucalyptus leaves and all these other things. So people were waking up to branches of the eucalyptus trees cut because there was a lot of demand for them. But for the entrepreneur, that was a chance now, or as an agroecological producer, that was a chance now for us to grow more eucalyptus trees and sell, instead of encouraging people to break into our yards and steal them. So basically, very, very important, consumer confidence. It's very, very important. And that comes with a lot of things. And the next point that I'm going to talk about is what actually hinges on consumer confidence. You don't think about diversifying after 3 invoices to the market. You diversify after you have achieved consistency, because consistency drives markets. I'll give you an example. When I was teaching my staff, when I was working in corporate, I would tell my staff that there are 3 important things in sales and marketing. And these are consistency, consistency, and consistency. There are only 3, and they relate to consistency in supply, consistency in quality, and consistency in delivery. Once you do that, Bob's your uncle. So then, for instance, when you get into a new contract with a customer, they will gain confidence in you when you fulfill at least 90% of their orders. And at least maybe, they have different ways of gauging how consistent or how much confidence they can have in you. Maybe some people it's after 5 invoices, other people it's after 10 invoices, but basically the truth is, and this can be proven, that consistency drives markets. So how you as a producer or as a supplier of agroecological products can achieve that is by making sure that you engage your customers and look at what are their needs for their specific product lines. if you're dealing with more than one. But if you're dealing with only one product, let's assume you're dealing with kale. I like kale because I just had a smoothie, so it's right on top of my head. So forgive me if I'm just sticking to kale right now. So if it's kale, you go back to your consumer, sorry, you go back to your customer and say, how much kale, how many kilograms of kale will you need for the next 2 months, for example, right? So they will tell you, and you go back to your production line and say, okay, I'll be able to get this product to you, while at the same time, remember when we're talking about diversifying, now because they've got confidence in you, you can actually use your experience with that one particular customer to woo others. For instance, you go to ShopRite, for example, and say, oh, actually, I'm already dealing with Spar, and Spar can put in a good word for me. Then you diversify, then you grow while you are growing your production capacity. So that's how to do consistency. And also, consistency works in terms of some people have gone to look for market and they go with the most beautiful, the most perfect looking product as a sample. And subsequently, when they are delivering their first order does not match their sample. And that's shooting yourself in the foot. And that also...
you have 3 minutes, Kanangwa.
Sorry?
You have 3 minutes left.
Oh dear. And that also hinges on consistency. Your sample must match your subsequent deliveries. So maybe can we move to the next slide, please?
Okay.
So this is just showing you one of our veggie boxes, which we delivered to an office. And this was our first delivery. And I bet you the next deliveries were just as good or even better than this one. So you see, who wouldn't want to buy a basket that's this nice looking? And also it's grown without chemical fertilizers and pesticides. Could we go to the next slide, please? Yeah, I think I missed one point in the previous slide about know your value. What is your value proposition? From the two presentations by Francis and Steph, if you scratch your head, search everywhere, look for your value proposition, well, Steph and Francis have given you your value proposition. If you only pick one from the points that they have raised, then you can sell your products to anyone. For instance, agroecologically grown products protect the ecosystem. Who in this room does not want to breathe clean air? Who in this room does not want their children to see bees? Who in this room does not want to live healthy and happy and more energetic? I think there's no one in this room that would answer no to that. So quickly, your value proposition, you decide for yourself. Are you cheaper? Are your products healthier? Are your products friendly to the environment? Are your products indigenous? Are your products, for everybody? Can they be enjoyed by everyone? Are your products nutritionally dense? Which they are. So all of this information is very important. Why should people buy from you and not from person X? Well, because I am sitting on the shelf cheaper. I am sitting on the shelf with products that are healthy. Even someone with cancer can start their therapy using my products, etc., etc. Value proposition is very important. Now, in marketing, it's very important to create a very strong brand. And by doing that, you have to decide who you are. Who are you? Why are you doing this? This is a very important question to answer. Once you answer the why question, nothing will be difficult for you. Know your audience. Remember what we were talking about previously about the place? about the place and the promotion, this all ties in with know your audience, know your competition. Know your competition means that you are going to avoid the mistakes that your competition made. You see, no need to reinvent the wheel. So know your competition, have coffee with your competition, and that will just keep you ahead. Define your tone. And when you define your tone, you have to stick to your tone. So as you make your first encounter with your customers, your tone should be exactly the same. Invest in your brand. Investing in your brand doesn't mean that you go and get a big loan. Invest in your brand. It's just little steps, using what you have. You know, you can even write things on a placard. Use social media. You get people to come to your farm. All sorts of things. I'm kind of like rushing through this. Think big, but act local. This is how you're going to get your brand. And your brand will go international by word of mouth. People will talk about your brand back in Zimbabwe, in the UK. Say there's this really nice brand, the products are good, word of mouth is going to help you on this, but you have got to start really good by investing in your brand, knowing your tone, and then knowing your competition and your audience. What do people say about your brand? And also another thing that I'd like to say is be your brand. Be your brand. You're not going to be seen in public, you know, eating chunks of, you know, inorganically grown meat in a takeaway. And then, you know, you go to the chief executive of a company and say, oh, you know, buy my product. When they saw you eating, you have got to be your brand, and people have got to see that in everything that you do, right? Could we please go to the last slide, where you're going to see one of our supermarkets, one of our shops shelves, and we have this is our tone, right? Everywhere we go, this is our tone as Loctaguna Organics. There is no planet B, buy organic now. So for us, this is our tone. Everywhere we go, this is our tone. And we're telling people, you know, conscious people, which most of us are becoming, would appeal to this. This would appeal to them more often than not. We're saying we're in this together. If we sink together. So you have the power to, you know, slow down the degradation of the environment. You've got the power, and the power lies in your wallets. If you are going to spend your kwacha, you spend your dollar, you spend your pula, you spend your rand by supporting your local organic farmer, your local agroecological farmer, then you are taking part in conserving the environment and you know, leaving a legacy for your children. Yeah, so that's all I had here. Sorry, I had to rush through it. And
thank you very much, Kanangwa, for that. And I think amongst us, we have learned of three consistencies. Be consistent, because there is no planet B. So we are going to be consistent, and our tone will be agroecology. So thank you so much. If we have any questions, please let's post them on the chat, and I will try and create some time to answer the questions that have been asked so far. But would like to also quickly move on and invite the other speakers to quickly share their presentations. Next, I'll invite Busisiwe Mganela to share with us what you have, and I'm going to give you 5 minutes. And may I request that as we proceed, we may overrun by about 5 minutes, so we would want to ask for your patience as well. Thank you very much. Over to you, Busi.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure for me to be in this seminar. As introduced, my name is Busi, an agroecology farmer in the Eastern Cape. I am asked to speak on agroecology and gender. Then I don't have a slide. I will talk out of my mind. Agroecology as an integrated approach applies social and ecological concepts and principles to the design and management of dense, nutritious food. And as you know, the majority of agroecology farmers are in the rural areas. They are in the townships. They are in informal settlements and backyards. These are women whose role is making sure their families eat healthy, clean food, and because of the inherent sexual division of labor, and because they have to care for their families and they have to do that work that has been put as a woman's place or a woman's responsibility. So I think that is why we find that so many women, there are so many women in agroecology. Because women always care, they find it easy to take care of natural resources. They find it easy to take care of environmental pressures and threats, and they are always willing to take action to defend and conserve ecosystems that are part of us and us. That's the woman's caring nature. You'll find that men are slowly joining agroecology because they see good results from women like Kanawa, or because their mothers or grandmothers, and that is how they were raised and cared for. Some men see it as an inevitable agricultural system of the future, thinking of the 7th generation. Even that said, gender equality is an issue too with agroecology. We also see inequalities in agroecology because you will find women being victims of unpaid labor. There is great workload due to women being involved in local markets. They go to the fields, they plant, they do everything that men do, and they are expected to be the ones that are mending the local markets, coupled with work that they have to do at home as women, because culture wants them to do so. So it is equal access to land, which is also an inequality that is there with agroecology. This could be due to the fact that culturally women are not allowed to own land. It could be political, as it depends on the country where one is. So unequal access to finance, unequal access to land, because then men are being prioritized in those areas. You will find in some countries, like in South Africa, they talk of 40% of budget of departments going to women. But you find that is just lip service. In practicality, it does not happen. The criteria that is put there for women to access that 40% favor men. For instance, they would be allowed to have that application because they need to have title deeds, which title deeds we know are not written under women. They are only on your father or on your brother or on your husband's name. Also with finance, they are looking for collaterals and assets. So women are exploited in that situation. There is control over them. They are not free. They cannot like work and be able to access finance the way men do. Also, you'll find that some women, even though they work hard on the fields and preparing food, healthy food, nutritious food, once they go to the local markets and they bring moolah, then the husbands take that money. Because of that, culture expects the woman to give the money to the men. And those men will misuse this money and they know that they did not work it. So there's a problem. There is gender inequality, which threatens human rights and healthy ecosystems. Women need to be in positions advocating for policies that include food sovereignty and nutrition for all. Therefore, there should be a combination of an agriculture approach to agriculture. There should be an emphasis on farmer-led research. There should be emphasis on integration of gender and other social inequalities as we go on advocating for agroecology in our countries. Then the choice remains with each agroecology woman. If she wants to be active as an eco-feminist, or if she wants to embed in culture, then does one relieve themselves in the inequalities and exploitation and control of patriarchy. So agroecology is not immune to gender inequalities. I think I will stop there and yeah, thank you. We'll wait for questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Busi, for that very powerful presentation as to agroecology and gender. And we would want to encourage all of us, wherever we are going to be practicing agroecology, to have that consideration for the gender balance, for all of us to be in there, to afford women that opportunity to do their best, because you can actually see, even from this call, majority of the presenters are women because they are passionately into it in terms of practice, because all that are in this call, most of them are actually practicing agroecology in their own right. They have pieces of land where they are actually practicing this. So it is our call for everybody to actually practice. And next, as we wind up, we are all people of faith, one way or the other, and would now want to call upon Dr. Manoj Kurian. Give us the faith perspective on agroecology. Over to you, Dr. Manoj. And as we heard from the introductions, he is well versed in agroecology, and the faith aspect is going to come up strongly in this presentation. Thank you very much, and over to you, Dr. Manoj.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I see that time is running, and I will try to make it brief, but I would like to share, a presentation to you. So it gives you a little bit of interesting. Can you see that? Yeah.
Yes, it's coming up.
Yes. So interfaith perspectives on agroecology. I think, first of all, I think we have to look at from the perspective of the earth itself. When you look at, this is the picture of it's called the Earthrise. The Earthrise is, this was the picture taken in 1968 in December 24th, when the Apollo 8 astronauts were going around the moon, and they like the sunrise. First time human beings saw the earth rising from the surface of the earth. So it was the Earthrise, and this was taken. It was a Christmas day, and when they broadcasted, when the astronauts broadcasted, they broadcasted by reading. They celebrated Christmas by reading the creation story from Genesis, and this is this beautiful vision of the earth. 386,000 kilometers away, and this beautiful planet Earth that we live in. It's a very spiritual, a spiritual sign. Let me just, yes, and all faiths, remind us about that the world is created for all creatures, and Psalm 104, of course, these are very common to all Semitic faiths, Judaism, Christianity, and also in Islam. The Psalms are very precious, and it teaches us, that you in South Africa, you must be seeing the hyrax, so not many people see these creatures in the Cape Town and all that. You see the rocks. So the Bible also talks us about that, even, it is not just for human beings. And all faiths teach us that. All faiths, because I come from Malaysia, brought up and spent many years in India, so I'm used to different faiths. And all faiths emphasizes on the greatness of creation. Now, why am I saying this? Because the world is so much, we don't know much of the world, and we are destroying the world in such a tremendous ways. I'm saying this because agroecology is a solution to all these. So Just for you to know that there are estimated 8.7 million eukaryotic species. Eukaryotic species are more advanced species, which has got a nucleus in their cell. And you know, most of it we don't even know. Most of the creatures we don't even know exist. And we are destroying it because of our industrial scale agriculture and our greed. It is not the greed of the poor people who actually populated most of the world, but it is the greed of a smaller proportion of people who use food as an industry. So this is, you know, this is a picture of this new species. There were 29 new species of fish discovered in Africa in 2021, 212 all over the world. And this is the picture of this beautiful fish, a new species discovered from Malawi. And this is happening every day. We are discovering new species. The earth is teeming with life, you know, and we are destroying the earth much faster than we even realize it. So the solutions of the world is being lost by the destruction of biodiversity, and you know, here it is, you know, you should, and soil is a tremendously important part of our creation. A single handful of soil considers consists even more creatures, that around 50 billion creatures, and we are only 8 billion human beings. We are 7.9 by the early next year. There'll be 8 billion people. So you can see one handful contains approximately 50 billion bacteria, 100 million fungal cells, and numerous nematodes. It is teeming with life. And this, I'm repeating this because you already heard that agroecology preserves this. Industrial agriculture, which pumps in fertilizers, pesticides, destroys it. Now, what is the next point I want to talk about? This is a picture from South Africa. Do you know from where it is found? You can read it. It's a nematode. It's a picture of a microorganism. It's actually a worm. It was unidentified, and it is taken from 1.4 kilometers below the surface of the earth in South Africa. So what I'm trying to say is the earth is teeming with life. Even so deep in the earth, we have life. It is not as abundant as you see in the surface, but we need to preserve it. And that is very, very important. There are people, huge numbers of people, 8, 9, and almost 8 billion people in the world. But you know, there's a lot of misconception saying that we need industrial agriculture to produce food for everybody. That is completely false. We can manage. We can manage. Now, I just also want to remind you of our interconnected with nature and the danger of our destroying the earth and destroying our environment. Each person is a cosmos. The number of cells, you know, is in the average human body is more than 30 trillion. That is 30 followed by 12 zeros. And the number of microbial cells living in and our body, from our mouth to the anal canal, from on our skins, in our nostrils, in our gastrointestinal, in our guts, and in our urogenital system is approximately 39 trillion. So, you know, it is hugely significant how we interact. We are interconnected as human beings with our environment. Even as an individual, we are not a rock. We are a community, a cosmos. So imagine the earth, how we are interacting. And agroecology, because of all the 13 points you realized, is promoting interconnectedness. And you see what is happening to the earth and the climate crisis. It is hugely a dangerous trend that we see. This is the chart showing temperature and carbon rises. You know, how it is increasing over the years, and it is changing tremendously. If you are from Southern Africa, you know that rains are no longer dependable. You know that storms and cyclones are getting stronger in Mozambique, and in the Indian Ocean is seeing many more huge cyclones, the Arabian Sea, I mean. And the health of the planet is actually creating tremendous changes. Wildfires, droughts. In the last 50 years, the natural disasters caused by climate crisis has increased fivefold. So, you know, it is a huge change. And this reminds us, and you can see this green part. Agriculture, forestry, and land use is around 18% of all the carbon emissions, responsible for carbon emissions. And this is what, we are talking about a third, 33% of all greenhouse gas emissions are caused by agriculture-related work. And this is the distribution, fermentation of animal guts, and cropland, manure management, fertilizers, pesticides, etc. So there is a huge contribution. And we have conflicts happening. I will skip these slides because of the time we have. So what we find is that the crisis is compounded by diseases like COVID, which is monkeypox. This is because we are destroying our natural environment. We are clearing forests. I come from Malaysia, and recently there was we have dispossessed the indigenous people. I'm saying this, I'm son of a planter. My father worked for a multinational company, many years ago, and they produced palm oil, and he was a planter, and we have destroyed a lot of our forests, displaced indigenous people, and created palm oil plantations. So, even my own life, even my own education was supported by this destructive process. So I'm not speaking from a pedestal. I'm speaking from a life who has benefited from this destruction. So we have to understand that we are part of this mess, and we have to acknowledge it, and we have to change. And this destruction is causing new diseases. In the world, there are 3 to 4 huge pandemics, actually the new diseases emerging out of animals. They're jumping from animals. I mean, monkeypox, COVID is the latest, Zika, every year. And this is because of climate change, of ecological destruction, of our industrial agricultural processes, and of course, conflicts and cost manipulations because of the commodification of rice, of all our agricultural products. Now, it is, just to show you the great impact of climate change and all these problems that has been, I will not actually dwell on it. I can give you this presentation if I will send the link to this presentation so you can study it. Now, what I wanted to, it has got tremendous change on health and tremendous decline of diversity of the health of the planet. The diversity of life is happening, and species are getting extinct at a phenomenal pace. So the sea levels are the carbon dioxide is causing warming of oceans. Why I'm saying this is this is linked to also fisheries. The fish, and you are living in a very critical region. The zooplankton, the warming of seas are not only causing more, making it more difficult for shellfish and etc. because of the higher acid, but it's also the warming is causing the zooplankton and the phytoplankton to move towards the colder regions. The fish stocks are collapsing. So industrial fishing. So part of agroecology is also more going to artisanal fishing and sustainable aquaculture. So I will move on from this. I mean, I can tell you there are a lot of things to talk, but let me go back to, let me just go to this. This is something that, it's a picture I had drawn, where you can see this kind of picture where I don't know whether you can see in the red, it's Adam and Eve are eating the apple, which is the earth. So it's our consumption patterns. But this is a very revealing slide, which shows who is producing the carbon dioxide, the greenhouse gas emissions. You can see where is sub-Saharan Africa. It is the third line. It's a third line. Very, very thin contribution. But sub-Saharan Africa is most badly impacted. So it's a global crisis. It is not enough for people in Africa to change their lifestyle. We have to hold the international communities and the governments and people of wealthier countries and wealthier communities, hold them accountable. This is very important. You can just the last week, in my own region in Asia, Pakistan, 40% of the country was underwater. It's a huge country with nearly 175 million people. 40% of the country was underwater. That country contributes less than 1% to the global greenhouse gas emissions. So you see, there is a huge challenge. And part of this is solutions agroecology. Agroecology is the way forward to bring about transformational change in global agri-food systems. Because agri-food systems is actually contributing this to the tremendous amount of destruction. And the dominant agri-food systems is largely driven by an industrial logic of economics of scale and intensification and specialization, not providing food security or adequate nutrition for all. And you know, and then in the WCC, we have developed 10 commandments of food. And you can see agroecology is featuring a lot. We are talking about giving thanks to food you eat food grown as close as possible that you live, strive that all people have knowledge and access. So this links to the sharing of knowledge, eat mindfully and moderation, do not waste food, be grateful to those who grow and prepare food, of which you were indicated here, our resource persons indicated women have a huge role in it. 70% of agriculture, but only 20%, 25% of the land is in their name. Huge challenges we have to face. Support fair work wages for farm workers, farmers, fisher folk, and food workers. Reduce environmental damage of land, water, and air from food production. Protect biodiversity and rejoice and share food. I just want to stop sharing now and then conclude by saying, we have. It is hugely important that we understand why agroecology is actually linked with faith. When you look at all the faiths, it talks about respecting nature. It talks about respecting creatures, thanking God for the food. And even the religions that do not talk about faith, do not talk about God, like Shintoism, Buddhism, they don't emphasize, they're not theistic religions. Even those religions have great emphasis on interconnectedness. But in the Semitic religions, which are Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, we believe that everything belongs to God. Everything belongs to God. And we are stewards and co-creators, because we are not just managing for God, but we have been given, because we are created in the image of God, we have been given a lot of authority to do right, and we can also the freedom to do wrong. So we are co-creators because we are creating new things, we are changing the face of the earth. But we are transient, our lives are transient, and we have to share. So when, in the Old Testament, when Noah, there was a covenant with Noah. After the destruction, the rainbow, it's a symbolic, of course, and in the covenant, God makes a promise not only to human beings. You should read chapter 9 of Genesis. It is clearly mentioned that it is a covenant with all creatures, and this is very important. And then as I told you, we are connected. so deeply interconnected. I reminded you, 30 trillion cells, but in each body, we carry 39 trillion creatures. We cannot live without our environment. We are so interconnected. If we destroy our environment, we will be destroyed ourselves. If you look at a fly, a fruit fly, Dorsophilus melanogaster, we share 40% of the genetic material with a fly. Can you imagine? We are so similar to everything. And so what does agroecology do? It helps us to create and cultivate in the traditional way, in a way that respects the ecology, respects biodiversity, reduces dependence on pesticides, because when you do intercropping, when you have if you have different species bringing together, there is a balance. If you have only one monoculture, then you have a particular disease coming and there is no natural resistance. When we cultivate onions and marigolds together, or when we cultivate different species like with legumes and cereals and grasses, there is intelligently done. It doesn't mean that you are just doing smallholder. You can even do it in a large scale, but in agroecological principles, and leaving trees and allowing the earth to be the soil which has been evolved over millions of years to continue to be rich, then we can live healthy lives. It is a no-brainer. It is actually, if you think that you have to depend on big industries to feed you, you are being fooled, because it is not true, because it is destroyed. Take even Southern Africa. You can imagine the history of your nation. I consider Southern Africa. I value your nation because I feel the earth, the whole South Africa as a nation, or Southern Africa as a region, is a representation of the whole world. If we shrink the whole world, we will have Southern Africa. The injustices that we do to each other is happening all over the world. Indigenous people being relocated, loss of land, people pushed into small communities, and the lands being usurped by the wealthy so that they can convert it in industrial agriculture. People being uprooted from their lands, from their cultures, from their traditional ways of living. And then you become consumers and you become servants and workers in the land of your ancestors, dispossessed. This is happening all over the world. And we are all guilty of this, be it in India, we are destroying ourselves. So agroecology is the way forward, because you can see the COVID crisis clearly showed us that we cannot depend on rice from Thailand. We cannot depend, and Ukraine teaches us that we cannot depend on wheat from Russia, or sunflower oil from Ukraine, because it might be a globalized. It is ridiculous. We need to be able to be autonomous. There should be a certain sovereignty, and we have to look at. You look at maize, one of the major foods of your region of Africa. It was brought in from the New World. Maize has replaced sorghums, millets. Next year, the FAO has declared it as an International Year of Millets. What happened to all our millets? They don't need so much of water. They are very resilient. We need to promote what our ancestors eat. We need to move from, into perennials, into annuals to perennials. We need to develop and identify rice and wheat and maize, which can grow, which can be last for 2 or 3 years, where we don't have to dig up the earth all the time. There are a lot of things that we can discover, and agroecology is not going back to the past, but it is getting the best of our past, preserving our culture, preserving dignity of life, preserving sovereignty of human beings and animals and creatures. Because you see, to come to a conclusion, it's not only about land and animals. We need to respect animals. Even when you go into the Old Testament, There are 630 mitzvot. These are commandments. There are commandments. And in that commandment, 26 are food related. 26 are food related. And there are 2 commandments in the Leviticus you will find that you should.
Sorry, Chamak, may you?
Yes.
Okay.
What I'm saying is it is so critical. So what the Bible teaches us, or the Old Testament teaches us, is that don't cook the kid in milk, the kid goat in its milk. So, so in the tradition, biblical tradition, they don't mix milk and meat. The reason is simple, because in the olden days there were shepherds, they had goats and sheep, and each person in the arid conditions, they have a particular number, and in each year they would have many kids, but they can't just keep on growing their flock, so they kill some of the kids and maintain their flock. But what the Bible teaches us, or the Talmud teaches us, is that, or the Quran teaches us, is that you can kill the goat, but please do not cook it in the milk that was supposed to feed it. What I'm trying to say is that our religious texts teaches us to respect life, the dignity of life. And the same thing with Eastern religions teaches us that we're interconnected with life. Agroecology is the only way in which we can actually treat animals and plants with dignity. We are part of creation. One day, when we die, we go back to the earth and we become part of the soil, and we become part of the elements which will enrich these plants. Plants and animals, our indigenous faiths taught us, are our brothers and sisters. When the San people used to hunt and finally, track an animal, and when it's killed, almost he asks the spirit of the animal forgiveness, say, I'm sorry I have to kill you because I have to eat. In my own context, when we used to cut trees, we used to talk to the spirit of the tree. I'm sorry I have to cut you because I need to build my house or my boat. So that deep respect of creation has to be sustained if we have to survive as humanity. And that means we have to respect the whole of humanity. Christianity and Islam and our religions teach us, and Hinduism and all of them teaches us that we are one body. One body. So in the Bible it says, you are one body in Corinthians. The word you in Greek is plural. That means we all are one body. And when we pray the Lord's Prayer, our Father, it's not my Father. You are sitting in South Africa, but you are my brethren and my sisters and my brothers. If we are one body, if one hand is in fire and the other is in water, you cannot say that on an average, I am fine. We cannot be fine with misery and struggles. We need to ensure that there is justice, there is compassion, that the whole world is not hungry, that we don't amass wealth in one place, sitting in one place. So, faiths, all faiths, point us to agroecology. You have read and listened to agroecology, but I just want to remind you that it is a very important time. We need to promote agroecology. We need to buy things from near our place. We need to uphold our farmers. Concluding sentence, I want to say, what is happening, because I am of Indian ancestry and I was introduced that, and Mira Shiva spoke to you, what is happening in the Indian subcontinent is very frightening. Thousands upon thousands of farmers are killing themselves because of the onslaught of this industrial agriculture and moving away from agroecology. There is billions of dollars paid on subsidies to promote dependence on destructive agriculture, and which actually is making fertilizer and petrochemical companies more rich. In that context, we have to be very vigilant, and we have to push governments to support more agroecological agriculture. And our climate crisis is not helping us. It's a very important period in time. And so this is just to, as a conclusion, it is frightening, but we have to be hopeful, because our faith teaches to be hopeful and to be courageous. I will conclude there, and if there are some questions, I can tell you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kurian. And this was very, very rich. And I would like to just quickly quote, agroecology is getting the best of our past. Thank you, Doc. And if there are any burning questions, I would allow maybe about 2 people to ask questions, because we have overrun our time, and my sincere apologies for that. But if we have any 2 burning questions, please just raise your hands, and let's have the question to Dr. Manoj, and also to Kanangwa. I would be great to say that some of our presenters had to leave because they are in another meeting right now. Any questions for Dr. Manoj, or any other questions for any presenters, so we can have a quick discussion, 1 minute or 2 minutes? Thank you very much. I see no hands up. It means, oh yes, I see Annalette. Would you like to ask your question? Please unmute and ask your question.
Good morning. Thank you, Gabriel, for this wonderful program. And I really learned so much. And I would just like to say that Reverend Berry from SAFSI and myself, we are involved with a research project connected with the South African German Research Hub on Religion and Sustainability. And SAFSI is also participating in it. And I'm a researcher in religion and ecology as well. And we are starting this project on the role of religions and interreligious dialogue in relation to agroecology in Africa. And we started with that actually 2 weeks ago. And so if it's okay with you, I would like to be in touch with some of you, and also with you, Gabriel. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Annalette, for that, and we really appreciate it. And Dr. Manoj.
Yeah, I just want to say that I will send you, Gabriel, the link to which I can just put some resources, because we have this advocacy material on 10 commandments of food, and also, you know, we don't fully know the answers, and we want to work with you, and please, you know, let us work together, because, you know, the challenges of the world are so great, and your experience in Southern Africa, you are very much advanced, more advanced than many places, and we would like you to use our platforms and also engage with other parts of the world to share your wisdom and experience. I will send you a link of files where I can share the presentation and files. So please send to all the participants. So, you know, because I can't just share in the chat box, I'll share it to you later on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kurian. And I would like to thank everyone for being on this call, and to our presenters and all the attendees for this wonderful call and time that we have had. And my plea is that each and every one of us, please let us take our part and do as we are supposed to do, and practice agroecology, even in our backyard gardens. I saw one of the chats in the chat box that said, some people are using fertilizers even within their yards. Please let us desist from the industrial form of agriculture, and make sure that our soil is a living soil, as was said by Dr. Kurian, and that if you're in your yard, your soil is dry and it does not have any living organisms in it, then please try and change, so that we will have living soils, as we have been taught all through, and that we are making our contribution towards making sure that the earth that we are living in is habitable for the next generations. Thank you so much to you all. I would now like to ask, I've seen Zondiwa is now on the call. If he is still on the call, please would you help us with a closing prayer? And I also see one of my fleet colleagues, Bridget Nomonte, is on this call, and you can also give us another closing prayer. So we'll start off from Zondiwa. But before that, I see Eric wants to say something quickly. Eric, if you may just quickly have a minute, and then we'll have our closing prayer.
Just to thank you very much for a wonderful presentation, and may God bless you. Going to put in practice with those who come to learn from you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see behind you there is a stove that is very eco-friendly. So thank you for practicing it. And would like you to share with many more other people so that they would have a similar stove to the one that is behind you. And now we can ask Justice to give us a first closing prayer, and then we would have Bridget to also give us the other prayer. Thank you. Justice, are you still on the call? It seems it's not, so we would proceed to Bridget to give us your words of a closing prayer.
Thank you, everybody, for participating. It's not for me to thank, but in our closing prayer, as a Quaker, we would be silent, but I'll give thanks to God and our Creator in every language. Uvelingaki, in Kulunkulu. I've forgotten the Jewish name and all the Muslim names, but in every faith name, thank you, Lord, that we can come together with this modern technology and save our earth and have our hearts and minds tuned in and educated so that we can practice each in our own small way or very large way to do our bit for a better earth, for now and for generations to come of all creatures on earth. Amen.
Thank you very much, Bridget, and thank you everyone for attending this call. We will be having other engagements going forward, which would include our regional interfaith dialogues. We are also going to be having some fleet engagements going forward. So we would want to invite you to attend to most of the platforms that we will be inviting you as SAFC to. And from all of us and from SAFC, my colleagues, I would like to acknowledge Zainab, Patiswa, Reverend Berry, Francesca, who have been helping us, and also Sipogazi, who have been helping us to run this call. So thank you very much, colleagues, and thank you very much, everyone.
May presenters share the notes with us?
Yes, we are going to be sending the presentations to the emails that you registered with. And thank you so much to every one of us. May God bless you all. Thank you.
May God bless you too.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. God bless you all, good people. Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Gabriel.
Thank you, and Father Joseph, all the best.
Invite.
Thank you.
Yeah, I will call you later.
Edward,
Bye.
how are you?
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you. All the way from Cape Town.
Hello, Solomon Wakadzanga and everybody.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Amen.
Hello, don't forget us. Don't forget us.
Thank you. Zugisi will be sending that to you as well. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you. Thank you so much.